Pasta is among the easiest things to cook. If you can fill a pot with water, bring it to a boil, stir occasionally, then drain into a colander, you can make spaghetti, penne, or macaroni in minutes. But what if there were an even easier way? One in which all you had to do was pour boiling water into a tube filled with pasta, dump, and strain. And what if that same device and method could cook other stuff as well? From asparagus to shrimp to sausages. Well, that's the promise of this, the Pasta Express. I found this at the thrift store new in the box for $5 recently, and I couldn't resist buying it. I wanted to know if the idea of no-stir pasta was ridiculous or a revelation. Today, we're gonna find out. Hello and welcome to I Want to Cook. My name is Chef Matt and this channel is all about helping you be a better cook. And today, well, we're going to be cooking with something a little bit unusual. Yes, this is another kind of wacky thrift store find. This is the Pasta Express. Now, like I say, I bought this recently. It was about $5 new in the box. And from the instruction manual, it appears dated to 2005. So that makes this about 20 years old. And I vaguely recall seeing these when they came out. Yes, as seen on TV, but I kind of forgotten about them since because, well, I don't think these are made anymore, and when I was trying to look up the company that makes it, well, it doesn't even seem to exist any longer. But I'm sure there's still many of these out there, maybe secondhand, or even a few floating around new in the box. But regardless, we're going to see if this thing actually, well, if the claims are true that it can cook pasta inside this tube with no stirring, just pouring boiling water into it and waiting and then letting it cook. Now, I cook pasta once to several times a week, both for the humans and dogs in my family, and I suspect you might cook it often too. Noodles are one of those quick, cheap, and relatively nutritious meals that are a staple throughout the world. For centuries, we stood around a pot or cauldron boiling and stirring the stuff. So were we really just suckers doing it wrong the whole time? Is there a better way to cook pasta? And is this it? Well, before we get cooking, let me give you a quick overview of this thing to show you how it operates. So this is the Pasta Express. This is not made out of glass. This is made out of plastic. It's this big vessel here. It's about a foot long, and well, that makes it ideal for being able to house spaghetti or just about any noodles. And you can also actually store the noodles in them when they're dry and kind of use this as a pasta container. So there's only a few parts to this thing. There's the main vessel, and then there's this, well, this is this strainer lid right here, and then there is kind of this locking lid that you put on top of the strainer. You twist it, you lock it in, and then once the water and the pasta or whatever food you're cooking are in here, you just kind of let it sit. Now it also comes with this thing. This is a thermal wrap, they call it, and I guess the idea is you can wrap this around the Pasta Express so that your hands don't get hurt by the hot water that's in the vessel. Although I found it never really got that hot, but it also does kind of help you grip the Pasta Express when you're pouring out the water or moving it. But that's basically it. There's just these components, and then it came with a recipe book, but that's about it. It's a pretty simple device, but the big question is, does it actually cook pasta as well or better than the traditional method of a pot? Let's find out. According to the instructions, it's recommended that you first fill the Pasta Express with hot tap water to warm it up. This is also helpful for a mug before you pour your coffee or tea into it. In the restaurant business, we used to call this charging a mug. After emptying the tap water, I put the spaghetti strands into the pasta express. Well, attempted to, as I missed the target on the first try. Whoops. I got it on the second, added salt just as I would if I were cooking pasta in a pot to season the water, and then added the boiling water from my kettle. By the way, that Hayden electric kettle that I also found at the thrift store got a workout this week. Link to that video in the description below. After filling the pasta express nearly to the top with the boiling water, it was time to put on the strainer lid, then the sealing lid. The strainer lid is a bit tricky to put on, but I eventually got it. Pasta Express also recommends using the thermal wrap, and as a good boy who follows instructions, at least the first time, I used it. I set a timer for the long end of the recommended cooking time on the pasta box, and from there, all I had to do was wait. I do admit it was nice to be cooking pasta and not stirring, but it also felt weird to not be tasting it along the way. This is something I always do when making pasta, as it helps you judge when it's al dente or to your liking. That isn't happening here without removing the lid and dipping in. After the allotted time, I took the Pasta Express to the sink, poured out the water, then dumped the noodles into a colander. They indeed turned out to be cooked, but they were a bit clumpy and didn't taste all that great. Luckily, I had willing eaters who aren't tough critics. Now, the Pasta Express says it can cook all sorts of pastas using the same process. So that's what I did, except I skipped the thermal wrap this time. So next up were elbows, and they too turned out okay, but getting them out of the Pasta Express was another matter. They had stuck together a bit, and after draining, I had to reach into the Pasta Express with whatever utensil was laying around nearby or my hands to dislodge the noodles. It felt like more effort than it was worth, and here again, the taste and texture was just okay at best. Now, you might recall I'm gluten-free, and that's actually the kind of pasta I usually cook. So I gave it a go in the Pasta Express. I did the same routine as with normal wheat pasta, but here the results were quite a bit less than stellar. The strands clumped together and appeared overcooked and tasted that way too. Perhaps if I had cooked them longer or added more salt, some of this could be remedied. But again, once this thing is sealed, it's a bit of a chore to try to rectify. Now, the Pasta Express bills itself as being able to cook more than just noodles via that same method. Everything from vegetables like asparagus to proteins like shrimp, hot dogs, and sausages. Maybe they should have just called it the Express. Well, I tried those things, and here's how that turned out. So the next thing I tried in the Pasta Express was asparagus. And here again, I loaded in the asparagus, poured over boiling water, and let it cook for the recommended 7 minutes cooking time. I drained, and I have to say, the asparagus was quite good. It was tasty, still relatively crisp, and overall pretty satisfying. But one thing I don't like about it is that when draining, I was pouring off all the nutrients that leached into the water, just like what would happen if I were simply boiling asparagus. Shrimp got the same treatment, with Pasta Express recommending a cooking time of 15 minutes. Now, that's about 3 to 5 times longer than I'd usually cook shrimp, but that's what it called for. Here, the shrimp turned pink, but their internal temperature only reached the 130s, a bit below the recommended doneness temperature of 145 degrees. They tasted pretty meh, and the texture was quite rubbery. I didn't have any hot dogs, but I had some sausages laying around, so it was their turn in the bath. I tried this once and I wouldn't do it again. The sausages, well, they were heated mostly through, but they were pretty gross and gooey. It might have been these particular ones that are to blame, but they really were not good visually or taste-wise. But here again, my non-critics enjoyed the experiment. Now, before we get to my conclusion on the Pasta Express, I wanted to do a little experiment. I wondered if the same cooking method could work in another vessel. Something in which I could simply pour boiling water on food, put a lid on it, and then let it cook. And then I recalled another thrift store find that I had recently, this asparagus cooker. And unlike Mr. As Seen on TV here, you can actually still buy one of these. Now I use this because it's similar in shape and size to the Pasta Express, and I did the same routine. So here's how that turned out. I should have broken the strands in half as my kettle didn't hold enough water to cover the pasta due to the larger diameter of the asparagus pot, but I scrunched the pasta down and made it work. The result was, well, better than I expected, but again, still negligible at best, just like with the Pasta Express. The pasta was mostly cooked, but here again, the texture just wasn't all that great, and neither was the taste. Cooking the asparagus this way in the asparagus cooker, well, that turned out fine. But again, just like with the Pasta Express or simply boiling asparagus, you're losing nutrients when you pour off that water. So the Pasta Express, does it work? Well, kind of. It's a novel idea, just pouring boiling water on food, letting it sit, and well, through a combination of heat, insulation, and patience, you cook your food without too much effort. But just about everything I cooked in this thing, well, the results were marginal at best. Yeah, things ultimately got cooked, but they weren't very good. This might have some really niche use cases. I don't know, maybe if you don't have a kitchen, but you have a kettle and you can boil some water, maybe this thing could work for like a dorm room or camping or something like that. But all in all, I think it's probably just not worth it, and there's probably a reason why these things aren't being made anymore. The promise is great, but well, the results not so much. At the end of the day, it really doesn't take a whole lot more effort to boil pasta the regular way in a pot, stirring it as you go and being able to taste it to see if it's to your liking. And well, the same goes for cooking something like asparagus or sausages, which is much better done with a dry heat cooking method anyway. I mean, if you boil asparagus, well, you're pouring off a lot of those nutrients when you shed the water. My preferred way of doing it is on a grill or in the oven or in an air fryer. In fact, I made a whole video on air fried asparagus. It's delicious, and I'll put a link to that video in the description below. But I want to hear from you. Did you buy one of these things, or have you ever used one, or did you have a friend or family member who did? I would love to hear what you think of this thing and the results you got if perhaps you ever used one of these. As for this one, it's likely going to be re-donated back to the thrift store, and I don't know, maybe somebody will have better luck with it than I did. Okay, before we get to trivia time, a little show and tell, and this is another thrift store find, but unlike that Pasta Express, I'm going to be keeping this one. This is a pot that I'd never heard of before. This is a vintage pot, and it's called Lo-Heet. I believe this was made by the Vollrath company back in maybe the 1950s or 1960s. And it is just a beautiful heavy-duty pot. I believe this is about 4 quart, And boy, this thing is just a monster. It was, kind of in rough shape when I bought it, but I was able to clean it up with some Barkeeper's Friend. And this is such a neat pot. I love the looks of this thing. I love the way it cooks. I've been using it recently. It holds heat really well. And I love finding pots that I never heard of before. Obviously, I don't think this is made any longer, but if you know of a pot called Lo-Heet, well, let me know what you know, because I'd love to hear more about this. But really cool pot, and I think this was $5 too, the same as that Pasta Express, and well, this one was well worth the money. Okay, trivia time. Last week I asked you to identify this monster, and several of you got it right. It is a pomelo, a type of large citrus fruit, kind of like a grapefruit, but not quite a grapefruit. A pomelo. Many of you knew exactly what this thing is. Congratulations to everybody who had the correct answer. For this week's culinary trivia, we have a part of something. If you know what this is and what it's used for, put your answer or guess in the comments below, and I will of course let you know the correct answer, what this thing is, and what it's used for in the next video. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Until next time, I hope you want to cook.